Allow me to set the scene. Gainesville, Florida, University of Florida campus, driving by Fraternity Row. Lake Alice is on one side, the frat houses are on the other side. It's just gotten dark. Miami has just clobbered Florida. We see people dancing on both sides of the street, and there's a lot of green and orange. And I mean, they are getting after it. There's twerking.
Yeah.
There's twerking.
On
And
truck beds.
yes. And you hear the boom. You hear the boom, and then you hear it. Whoop, whoop, pull over, that ass too fat. If you can't celebrate a 41-17 win against your in-state rival with Trina and Trick Daddy, what are you even doing? This was a relief and a release from a Miami fan base that has been waiting for something like this to happen. They've been waiting for a team that looked like the teams they remembered when they grew up. Because these are not college students dancing. These are old people.
Yeah. I mean, listen, coming from a family that has some pretty tortured sports fans, to the impact that this game has is very multifaceted. I mean, on one hand, it's a statement of, hey, we're really good this year, which is always exciting for anybody. Week 1, I don't know how much that means, because you can be really good in week 1 and be heartbroken by week 6. It was a line in the sand between a program in Gainesville that has a lot of pride and a lot of success on it in its recent past that's not doing real hot right now, and yourselves, which is a huge way of explaining and showing that you've improved in a way that people anticipated. And then lastly, it's a rivalry win on the road in a stadium that you haven't won in 2 decades. Like, there is a lot to be excited about. New players making plays, a coach turning the page, going into Gainesville and making a statement. Like, in terms of like the entire package of what Miami could have accomplished in Northern Florida on Saturday, I think they basically hit all the notches there.
Yeah, I don't think there's any quibble you can make with that performance. And they were better in every position group than Florida. And it feels like such a measuring stick because it's kind of easy to do it because Billy Napier and Mario Cristobal were hired within 8 days of each other. They were both kind of given the same mandate. They were both given more resources than their schools had previously given to a coach. And it was basically, do something with this, fix this. And through 2 seasons, I wasn't sure Mario Cristobal was going to fix it.
Yeah.
But now I'm much more confident that he can, because this roster is capable of winning the ACC. This roster is capable of making the playoff. It doesn't mean it will, but it means they're absolutely able to do it as long as they keep progressing.
Yeah. We had to think in the not so distant past, a very scary thought if you're a Miami fan, which is, if Mario can't do it, well, who the hell can at this point? Like this is like, you get to a point where it's like, I almost got, maybe it's just kind of doom and gloom because I thought that about Nebraska and Scott Frost, and here we are with some excitement. But like, there have been a lot of people from Miami who have been put in charge to put a gate around the 305 and do all the things that you're supposed to do in order to be good at Miami, who have failed. And things got off to a really rocky start in Coral Gables for Cristobal. And it's not just failing to take a knee, like they were losing a lot of games and they weren't looking very dynamic in the process. So to watch what we know about Mario, which is he builds the lines and he knows how to put together a roster. I think he unequivocally has proven that Miami's roster is much, much better in year 3. Now you're winning rivalry games by 24 points against a program that you have made the good point should have been your equal coming into the season. And you're looking at a schedule here where I don't think there's a single a game that you can say loss guaranteed.
Right.
Like, we're talking about a team that will make the playoff unless something goes terribly wrong, which is not something that you could say with a straight face a year ago.
Yeah, because if you look at Miami's ACC schedule, obviously Florida State's going to be tough. They haven't beaten them in a while, but I think they might be favored. And we'll see what happens with Florida State going forward. But that Georgia Tech loss suggests that Miami up front, because especially the way Georgia Tech beat Florida State, Georgia Tech manhandled Florida State up front. Well, guess what Miami can do? Miami's probably better on both lines of scrimmage than Georgia Tech.
And they were without their best pass rusher for the entire game when Ruben Bain left. He'll be out a few weeks with a soft tissue injury, but like he did not play in that game.
Right. And everybody who filled in looked just fine. So we talk about the ACC schedule. And look, there's some traps there. Like going to USF is not the easiest thing in the world. That offense is great. Byron Brown is a very good quarterback.
He's really, really fun to watch.
But and then going to Cal and having to play Jaden Ott in an ACC game.
Miami college football,
Miami at Louisville, October 19th, I think is the one where we're gonna look at that and go, okay, are they ready to win the ACC? And if they go in there and they thump Louisville, or even they just win it, I think you're going to be feeling pretty good about Miami's chances at that point.
I mean, you're looking at the 1-2 punch of their season in late October. They're the 19th at Louisville and then hosting Florida State the following week. But I really do believe, and I want that they're going to be a very good football team. And I said this on our podcast. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. But we make the mistake as college football fans of thinking, well, they messed it up in the past. They're definitely going to mess it up again. That's not always the case. Didn't happen with Texas that way last year. I have a lot of hope that Miami can duplicate it. And I'm not saying they're as good yet, but I think that they can overachieve in a way that people, wouldn't expect it to based on that past. But I want to ask you a question. Let's just use this to workshop a little bit. I have to do a top 10 after the LSU.
Oh, boy.
USC
Okay.
game.
All right. Here we go.
Where does this team get put on Andy's top 10? Because I went to bed. Literally the last thing I thought about last night before I went to sleep is, what do I do with Miami?
So I'm going to call back to your old friend, Doug LeMarie. So when I was an AP poll voter, Doug was also an AP poll voter. And he started doing this thing where he just sort of ripped it apart after week one, threw out all the preseason expectations, and only voted based on games that had actually been played this season. And it would produce some pretty wild stuff. Well, if you're doing that this year, you're going to put Miami probably in the top 3 based on what we've seen between week 0 and week 1. Now, I will tell you right now, I have it easy because I'm doing bracketology. So I have to use the college football playoff seeding rules. So I can't put Miami lower than 3. Like, I'll have Miami seeded 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
In the bracketology. That's a spoiler alert. We haven't put that column out yet, but I mean, based on what we've seen so far, I'm going to say they're going to win the ACC, which means they're going to be probably one of those top 4 seeds, and probably, I would think, ahead of the Big 12 champion. But look, if they play like that every week, they might be ahead of the Big 10 or SEC champion too. It just depends on how things go.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, I put Miami at number 10 in my preseason poll.
Yeah.
And people went berserk. So, I feel like they already deserve to be probably in the top 7.
Yeah, I would think so. And it's going to change over time, and we don't know they're going to play this way every week. But again, if this is repeatable and consistent, they are a top 10 team for sure.
Yeah. So, I don't know that I'm going to vote in the same way as the great Doug LeMarie used to, because I do think that, that premise at times might not give credence to what we know and the abundance of information that we have about rosters. And we have to use that I have to use that. I'm not somebody who can just be like, Vanderbilt won week 1 against a team that we thought had a chance to win the ACC.
Put him in the top 5.
I'm not going to do that. But I do think that I might be putting Miami in the top 5 when I get around to writing this on the airplane.
I do think that's fairly reasonable. And anybody who watched that game is going to go, yeah. Now, you can say, oh, I don't know if Florida was that good. But look, there are NFL players on Florida's roster. It is not the best constructed roster in the world. But it is a decent roster that Miami thoroughly dominated.
You know what I hate? And I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I'm trying not to scream. We're in your house. You've got kids. We come into a game 48 hours ago, and we're looking at this game and saying this is one of the most intriguing matchups of the preseason. We have 2 teams who are evenly matched, and we're going to find out a lot about both teams. Then one team kicks the other team's ass, and if you're one of those people that just goes, well, Florida stinks, then what are we doing?
Right.
You have to yes, it's possible that Florida stinks. Yes, it's possible that Miami loses 3 games this year, and what we saw was a mirage based on playing a stinky team. Yes, of course that's possible, but you can't constantly strip away everybody's achievements by turning your nose down at how bad or good their opponent was. And lastly, beating the crap out of Florida, even if this is a bad version of Florida, still makes that line in the sand between us and them, and they pass that test with flying colors. So if you're one of these people that like watches that game and sees Restrepo running all over the field, Cam Ward keeping his composure, their lines controlling both sides of the line of scrimmage without their best pass rusher, and goes, Florida stinks. Like, I cannot stand. Like, how do you view the sport? Why do you watch the games? Just say everybody stinks when everybody wins and give no credit. You know what? I'm going on notice right now, Andy. Miami has my respect until they lose it. And I'm not going to belittle their accomplishment, the thing that they've been dying to do for years, because we think Florida might not be very good this year.
Well, and the other thing is, before the game, we were coming up with, okay, here's how Florida beats Miami. And one of the things that we talked about was, well, that atmosphere in the swamp. Well, I can tell you, when the game started, the atmosphere in the swamp was electric, and it did not bother Miami at all. So guess what? If you think that might bother them, and other than Louisville, and they don't play Florida State and Tallahassee, they're not going to face that sort of environment very much this season. Virginia Tech comes to them, so they're not going to have to worry about Lane Stadium. They might not see that until the playoff. And by the way, if they keep playing, well, they might be hosting a playoff game or not even playing in the first round because they have a bye.
When we were coming into the Miami game, or the Florida game for Miami, talking about Miami, how many different things could we have conceived could have gone wrong?
Oh.
Cam Ward throws 4 picks in the swamp. It's too loud in there. They get mauled on the line of scrimmage by an SEC opponent. Their receivers don't get any separation. Damian Martinez has a bad, like, all these. Where did they come up short?
Nowhere. Their receivers got open. They mauled Florida on both lines of scrimmage. The noise didn't bother them. They passed every single test.
And if you pass every single test and your grading rubric is Florida stinks, then I think you stink. Okay, that's what I think. So, let's watch the games. It's week 1. We know. But as we know that things can happen, and as this sport, things can switch on a dime. And hey, we could be sitting here in 2 weeks watching a Miami South Florida game where the score is 13-10 in the fourth quarter. We've been around the block. We know how the sport works. But for the time being, for somebody like me who has never had a hard time being negative and being hard on people, I think the new Ari needs to give people flowers when they deserve it. And I think Miami deserves their flowers. And you might be a hater, but I am not a hater. I think Miami has a chance to be very good this year.
I'm going to make Ari a Miami base mix for his trip home.
Yeah.
Because before we got to the Trina and Trick Daddy scene, we were walking through the parking lot. Somebody was playing Splack Pack. And listen, Miami fans, celebrate. Play the Splack Pack. Play 2 Live Crew. Play DJ Magic Mike. Because you did. You came up to Gainesville and you dropped the bass. That's exactly what you did. Drop!
Oh, man.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.